Welcome to CTIA's 5G Summit. I'm Matt Gerst, the Vice President in Regulatory Affairs at CTIA. If you're watching this, you know just how central wireless services have become to every aspect of our life. But COVID-19 has really crystallized just how important that connectivity has become. And after billions of dollars invested in world-leading mobile wireless networks, innovative devices, services, and applications, exceptional value to nearly every American, all under a national regulatory framework, America's wireless networks are capably handling the surge in voice and data traffic that we've seen as a result of COVID-19 response. And while our networks are doing exactly what they were built to do, COVID-19 continues to impact too many people. And even for people not infected, Americans have upended their lives trying to keep themselves safe. So we're in a truly unprecedented time, but we've brought together a great panel to explore the role of wireless and how we have tried to use wireless to create some sense of normalcy. I'm joined today by David Villyard, who is the Deputy at the National Coordinating Center for Communications in CISA at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, as well as Michele Thomas, who's a Vice President at T-Mobile, and Grant Spellmeyer, who's a Vice President at U.S. Cellular. Thank you all for joining us today. The fact that you're actually joining remotely is just a true definition of 2020, I think. So David, let's start with you. Let's go back to the beginning of the pandemic. As everyone began social distancing policies, wireless traffic patterns changed overnight, and policymakers were asking a number of questions. So take us back to that moment and what you learned and how'd we do?
So beginning on March 16th, we started having massive telework across the United States. DHS actually started on March 16th, and that was unplanned. We were supposed to do a telework test on Friday before, and then while we were at home that weekend, our governor here in Virginia said, everybody stay home. So we started on the 16th of March, and we have been teleworking ever since. So it's been a rather long process. When people started working from home, the number of people working from home started growing as the days continued because more states started locking down, more people started staying at home. Initially, there were concerns about, is the bandwidth going to hold up? Is there sufficient connectivity throughout all of the telecom networks? And then about the time we were figuring we were settling in, then we had the added number of K through 12 universities who suddenly decided, oh, we're going to start doing virtual learning for the remainder of the year. So it was a pretty much a snowball effect as people started working from home. It just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. Initially, we had a few complaints on availability and data throughput. Most of those were handled by tweaking networks and by adding network elements. But for the most part, the infrastructure held. And we started our new normal, which was a lot heavier traffic on everything from wireless all the way to traditional networks, voice over IP, you name it. So the initial concern from federal and others, the government leadership, revolved around, is the network able to handle this load for a long period of time, just in case we have to do this beyond 60 or 90 days, which we did. At first they said, well, we don't think the networks will handle it. And it made me kind of laugh because on any given Christmas or New Year's, everybody's home. So it's not like we picked up a whole lot of different people. Our tourists actually stopped. So that was a population segment that decreased, and our normal, number of people who lived in the United States didn't really increase. So what we started doing was we started working with CTIA. We started working with industry members, associations, and those people, and started trying to put together a report that could alleviate of our senior government officials. Publishing a weekly network reliability report where we were getting information from a myriad to show that the network was in fact robust and was handling everything fine. Once we proved that the cellular and all those guys were okay, the next thing they were worried about was the internet. And that was from Zoom and Skype, Teams, all these platforms where everyone now is doing video teleconferencing and the like. And again, the backhaul, the internet providers who brought that service delivery into the cloud and into our homes did fine. The only bumps we had in the road were uh, people didn't have enough bandwidth in their house, or people didn't have enough bandwidth in their work to where they could, handle the incoming work. But that was fixed pretty quickly, and our new normal is now our new normal.
That's exactly right. And so, Michele, let me bring you in here. Being able to meet this demand didn't happen by accident. So can you tell us a little bit about what T-Mobile saw in its network and how the network kept so resilient?
Yeah, and thanks, Matt. And first of all, thank you to CTIA for including T-Mobile on today's discussion. As you noted, we obviously also saw our customers change their mobile wireless usage during this pandemic. And as the stay-at-home orders that David was referencing were issued by the governors in nearly all 50 states and its territories, the makeup of the network traffic on the T-Mobile network changed beginning in the mid-March timeframe as citizens and communities responded to those orders. We saw increases in the types of customer traffic and where the traffic was coming from for the reasons that David was mentioning. Our president of technology, Neville Ray, he frequently updated our customers on the status of our network via social media. And it was pretty extraordinary stuff. We obviously saw significant increases in hotspot usage week over week. And in that late March timeframe, Neville had reported on social media that just in a matter of weeks, we had seen a 38% increase of the hotspot usage. 2 weeks later, he presented some more information, which reported that we had seen yet another 22% increase. So as government was issuing these orders, we obviously were seeing the use and the traffic shifting on the network. And then, as David was referencing, we also saw certain applications that were the use of those applications that were changing. Again, the distance learning. So we've in monitoring the network, we saw 167% increase to manage kids doing distance learning. They were using applications like Khan Academy and Google Classroom. And the video game traffic obviously increased as well with people being home. We saw an 85% increase in gaming traffic. And then, some extraordinary kind of, anomalies as well. A huge increase on food delivery apps, which was kind of cool to see and watch. But we were monitoring it very closely. And obviously, as I just articulated, saw a lot of change. And I'll say personally, I changed the way that I use my mobile device, and the people in my house did too. I mean, being at home with my husband and 2 daughters and 3 dogs, trying to balance work and manage their distance learning and more. I mean, we definitely saw our wireless devices becoming important tools in how we kept up with our responsibilities. And it also made it so that, with everybody in the house, you had the ability to step away in those private moments where you needed to get something done and you were relying more on your mobile device than you would on your essentially just your fixed broadband device in your house. So we've remained vigilant on monitoring the network. We're obviously not through this pandemic yet, but there's obviously been an adjustment. But the network, as David said, and as you all can appreciate because of your efforts of helping to monitor with us and report on it, the networks are performing well. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that, a large reason why the networks are doing so well is because of the dedication of our engineering team that's been out there and managing that. So definitely saw a change in behavior, and we're still seeing that behavior today.
Absolutely. And thanks to everybody who's out there working to keep the networks up and running. Grant, can we pull you in here a little bit? How is US Cellular able to help meet the moment? And were there any FCC policies that you think also helped to deliver services here?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So just by way of background for folks that aren't familiar with US Cellular, we're the nation's fourth largest wireless carrier now. We serve parts of 21 states. I think the important point for today's discussion is that we're a much more rural focused carrier than the three national carriers. Now we serve a couple of big cities like Milwaukee and Oklahoma City, but a lot of our footprint is much more rural in nature. Yet we saw a very similar experience to what T-Mobile and I think other carriers experienced. It was a migration of traffic from the more commercial centers out into everyone's neighborhoods, and we've been equipped to serve those neighborhoods for a long time, but it certainly put a strain on our network. We saw similar 25% increases in network traffic and huge spikes in Zoom, and video gaming again did lead the way for us. I would highlight a couple of things from a government perspective that were particularly helpful. I thought the first one, well, let's start with DHS. Let me say thank you. All the work DHS did around the clock early on with things like access letters. Really, in a large portion of our footprint, we didn't encounter problems getting access to facilities, but there were a number of places where we did, and those access letters were very helpful. The second thing I guess I would call out is the FCC's cooperation on a daily basis. Very early on, as some of our networks saw significant loading issues, we went to the FCC and sought a series of STAs, which are special temporary authorities, to bring additional unused spectrum from another carrier online quickly. And it was AWS-3 spectrum. It helped us resolve congestion problems in a lot of places. And I was on the phone with FCC staff at 11 o'clock on Sunday nights, and they worked around the clock to be very responsive. And within a matter of days, we had significant additional spectrum turned up. So I think those are in the interest of time, I won't repeat all of the statistics, but it's been a great success story.
Certainly appreciate the collaboration with the government to help the networks maintain services for consumers. Michele, are there any other collaborations you want to call out in working with the government?
Well, I'll just highlight from our point of view how critical it was for the DHS and CISA guidance to define us as essential services. That really allowed, as Grant was saying, us to be out and about doing what we needed to do for continuity of service. What I think is important to highlight more specifically about that designation is that when the states were issuing their executive orders, of the 49 states where there was an executive order, and they changed and they were amended over time, 31 of those jurisdictions included the definition of essential services. And in some respects, they were attaching the guidance that was coming out of DHS, which was very, very important to us for the obvious reasons. So, again, this coordination that was acknowledged before, and I do also want to acknowledge the coordination also with the states. There were inquiries, they asked questions. The information that CTIA was compiling on an aggregated basis was helpful in informing them. In addition to just a process, as you know, Matt, that we've been living under a framework, a resiliency framework that, while maybe had not previously been used in a pandemic, it surely worked in the context of this pandemic. And so I think it gave comfort to the regulators, not only at the federal level, but at the state level. So those are just some additional things that I think in the context of, trying to manage the surge in your traffic, giving regulators a comfort level that, you're managing and meeting the needs of consumers, and then marrying that with just a framework that they were familiar with, and how we communicate and what we share and how we coordinate, I think was really a testament to all the work that's been done over the past several decades.
Clearly, there's been a whole of government collaboration here to try to respond to the pandemic and help the industry maintain services for consumers. Let's turn a little bit to how the wireless industry is actually helping Americans stay connected through social distancing. Michele, T-Mobile has made a huge commitment, not just to addressing the homework gap, but what you're calling the schoolwork gap. Can you talk a little bit about what T-Mobile is doing on that front to keep and make sure that Americans stay connected?
Yeah, and thank you for acknowledging that. It is a pretty extraordinary program. We're super excited about. We just rolled it out within the last month or so, and for those that aren't familiar with Project 10 Million, it offers free connectivity for 5 years. It offers a free hotspot, and then it gives households who may not have a connection to broadband or have devices to also buy at cost devices in order to use those hotspots and to benefit from those free services. So it is a 5-year commitment. We've committed to do it in 10 million households. It's worth about $10.7 billion in investment. And really, the ability to do this at the time of COVID is not something that we planned for. It just happened to be a tool that we had committed to relative to the recent approval of our merger with Sprint. And so applying it in a pandemic and being able to really do exactly what you said, take the schoolwork gap or a homework gap and now apply it to a distance learning need as a result of a pandemic has been pretty extraordinary. We've done a couple of other things too in this space, in addition to obviously all of us being signatories of the Connected America pledge with the FCC, but we've done things even more so in an effort to address the needs of our customers. Another thing that we did as a result of the issuance of these is give people flexibility to do make adjustments, obviously, in their plans and their services. We offered a new service, a $15 and a $25 prepaid option to people who were having difficulty paying their bills. And then obviously the more important thing, consistent with the pledge, working with consumers and our customers in particular to make sure that in this circumstance and in financial hardship, which was also part of this pandemic, that they knew that they could reach out to us and that we would be there to help them and provide them enormous flexibility. So, Project 10 Million is just one thing that I feel very strongly and very proud about the company having done, and has only been highlighted by the pandemic. But there are a lot of things in addition to that particular program that we've done, and a lot of stuff that I've seen the industry do, including US Cellular, which I think is just shows how much we want to be there for our customers and meet their needs in this extraordinary time.
Absolutely. We've seen so many companies stepping up over this time to help keep Americans connected. Grant, we know that wireless is there and that most people are able to rely on it, but too many still cannot. So what has this episode with the response to the pandemic really shown us about our universal service policies?
Well, it's a great question, Matt. As you know, you and I have been working on digital divide issues along with CTIA for a long time, before the hashtag digital divide was trending on Twitter. But certainly this COVID crisis has brought to the forefront policymakers in Washington's focus on what we're going to do with the digital divide. And those of us in rural America have talked about it for a long time. I think one of the benefits of COVID has been that a whole lot of folks, for one reason or another, left urban America and went to rural America, be it to your home, be it to your, I know people working out of their mother-in-law's basements, and a whole variety of places where people have gone over the course of the last 6 months and all of a sudden discovered that lack of connectivity was all the more important. And then you layer on the important education issues that Michele touched on. And I think it's really brought it all together in a perfect storm to focus Washington on what to do going forward. The costs of serving rural America are higher and the number of customers there are lower. That creates the fundamental disconnect that policymakers need to address. Congress has had a whole bunch of proposals over the course of the last 6 months looking at this. They've sent money for education to schools. There have been a number of proposals that have been close to being adopted by either one house or the other that would focus additional funding on low-income recipients, on unemployed Americans. A lot of work's been done on voucher programs. T-Mobile and US Cellular led the way on that effort. And I think in 2021, the framework is perfect to revisit universal service policies and finally get the job done of connecting rural America. And, that'll be, I think, both 4G and 5G connectivity. So proud to be part of the effort and look forward to 2021.
So we've got time for a few more questions. And, I think, Grant, to your point, the COVID-19 pandemic has really, ushered in these economic and societal transitions to network-dependent services. So, David, what is CISA seeing in terms of this transition, and what is CISA doing and your agency doing to help wireless providers make sure that those communications are secure?
So over the last 20 years, we've seen the entire telecom paradigm shift from everybody having copper pairs at their houses to now there are good number of houses that don't have copper going to their house. They don't have anything going to their house. They're just using their cell phones. So, we have households that have 3 or 4 cell phones, and that's it. So the paradigm has shifted. And with the rollout of LTE, 4G, 5G, we're shifting the paradigm again. So we are very well aware of how this shift in this paradigm is going to affect mobile security and wireless security, because you could have a 5G network that is using wireless broadband, but not necessarily using the wireless carrier networks. But it's going to involve everybody because high frequencies, low transmission paths, and all that good stuff. But I think with the increase in speed, increase of data throughput, lower latency that 5G kind of promises, it is absolutely worth the effort to get it built in there. So what CISA is doing is CISA is involved with several different initiatives internally with CISA and with other government agencies. And CISA is basically looking at everything from user equipment, the handsets, the small office, home office network elements, IoT devices, core network, RAN elements, and supply chain. So they're looking at everything from soup to nuts to try to figure out how do we keep bad people out of the new network so that we have reliability without the latency, without a lot of security overhead built into it to slow it down, but at the same time guarantee that the U.S. people who are using 5G have a secure network that they can feel safe in using.
Well, we've got time for one more question. So clearly, video conferencing, just like we're using today, Zoom, Teams, FaceTime, that's become the killer app of the COVID-19 era. Video conferencing is truly having its moment this year. So Michele, Grant, what is that? Do you think that's here to stay? And do you think that's going to have an impact on the wireless networks going forward, and how 5G might be able to help through investment in 5G networks support those services going forward and support our economic recovery?
Yeah, the answer is absolutely yes. I think it is here to stay, but not maybe the way that we've been using it in a pandemic. I think what you were referencing is, it is an app and it can be used in so many ways, not just for, meetings and conferences, but we've seen it in telehealth, which has made a major adjustment in supporting, for example, veterans healthcare, which T-Mobile has been very much involved in, the VA and assisting veterans during the pandemic who can't get to doctor's appointment to be using an application in that way that gives video. And there are a host of other examples, that David is talking about that, relative to using these lower latency networks, right? These high capacity networks, and marrying that with whatever the need is, not necessarily because you're in a pandemic. So I'm actually excited to see, what the big app takeaway is going to be from pandemic that creates this, incredible ecosystem, just like we saw 3G to 4G with Facebook and Uber. I think it's yet to be seen. I'm waiting. I don't have any children in my house in a garage working on anything killer at this time, but I wish they would. But I'm just super excited to see what people take from this experience to really put out there from just a new application of this. But we're starting to see it. And obviously the telehealth one, I think, is a pretty significant one.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. COVID-19 has truly ushered in an unprecedented era, but I think it's clear from this panel that we can rely on wireless services to meet our evolving social and economic needs. I want to thank our panelists, Michele, David, and Grant, for joining us today to enlighten us on this issue. And I ask everyone watching to please wear a mask, keep your distance, and stay safe. We hope to see you all again very soon, and please enjoy the rest of CTIA's 5G Summit.